Next up, all right, we are going to hear from Progress, one of our good friends here. And presenting today for Progress is Greg Collins, Product Marketing Manager. He has been on with us before and is always great. So, Greg, you are up, sir. Take it away.
That's great. Thanks a lot, Mackenzie. Well, hello, everyone. I'm excited to be here today talking about boosting IT efficiency and going into how to do more with less. So to introduce myself, my name is Greg Collins and I'm the Product Marketing Manager for Progress's WhatsApp Gold. My job here is to help inform you, the audience, on IT infrastructure monitoring and hopefully provide some valuable insights that help you boost IT efficiency within your own network. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to ask. I have my colleague Jason Alberino, who's a Principal Product Manager at WhatsApp Gold, on hand to answer any questions at the end of this session. So I'll start by going through the agenda. The goal here is to tell a story about how you go from manual or no monitoring to the best type of monitoring, which we call customized monitoring. So I'll touch on some of the challenges system admins face today, the monitoring solution hierarchy, and finish off with a Q&A session at the end. So we'll start by talking about the challenges that IT operators face today. To put it simply, it's difficult to keep track of everything. Realistically, if you can't see it, you can't know its status, and if you don't have the right tools in place, you can't drill down to the root cause of the issue to be able to resolve it permanently and quickly. When you think about it, every network that is in production has so many moving parts, and things are constantly changing across the board. So within environments nowadays, there are patches, software updates, things are changing, they get blocked. There's so many different things to consider. All the time, new systems are being created in a virtual environment that you didn't really know about in the first place. It really is constant change. And all of this is happening on top of the normal job responsibilities that someone has in the IT operations space. Unfortunately, the expectations are for near 100% uptime while accounting for all these ongoing changes in the environment. It's just a reminder here that your environment is a dynamic growing entity, and the more complex it gets, the more likelihood you're going to experience issues with performance and also with the dreaded word, outages. So let's drill down into outages next. So let's talk about the impact of an outage. So when it comes to outages and performance, to be honest, there's no solution that exists that covers every possible scenario. Outages do occur for many different reasons, but we can all agree on the overall impact. If an application or service becomes unavailable, to put it simply, people can't actually work. This is one of the first things you'll hear about from an outage, is that employee productivity is reduced. They're going to be calling you, letting you know that they can't access what they want, and as a result of this, there are serious implications. What's even worse, I would say, for the business is that there is a real danger in damage of reputation. So let's take, for example, an online store or payment processing system, something that's externally focused, something that would drive a negative customer experience if there was downtime. All of this can end up with damage to your reputation and revenue. That's the business impact. It really comes down to productivity and cost. You have to remember, customers hitting an unavailable service are much less likely to return ever again. We actually conducted some studies to figure out what does it actually cost the business. I think it's important to throw some numbers at it to give an idea of the impact. So one study by EMA looked at the average cost per minute of an unplanned IT outage, and it came to almost $13,000. For the largest enterprises, it can be as much as $25,000 a minute. I hope I'm getting the point across here that it's definitely not cheap. On the other hand, another study looked at Fortune 500 companies. It referenced a 47% loss of productivity due to a planned or unplanned outage, and then a 41% hit to brand equity and trust. So these numbers are real and are happening out there. With that being said, we'll firstly look at the non-automated detection approach. We've encountered a lot of different customers in the past that were trying to do this all manually. We've seen customers manually logging into systems, trying to write their own scripts, spending an enormous amount of time trying to do it themselves. And in theory, it is possible to take this approach, but as networks continue to scale and grow, new services get introduced, and the manual scripted-based approach that people can take can often become overwhelming. If you take, for example, a small network of roughly 255 addresses, if you're trying to collect data from all those different systems, you would need to go to each IP address. You may spend 10 to 15 minutes per IP address attempting to collect data, connect to protocols. And when you multiply that by 255, it quickly becomes unsustainable. We've seen customers in the past who created their own scripts for doing this and semi-automated the process. However, even that becomes unsustainable. At the end of the day, the scripts are written and maintained by someone, and then maybe that person may leave the company. Employee churn can halt this whole process, and you're struggling to figure out, how do I maintain this going forward? I suppose the overarching lesson here is, yes, it is possible, but it's just not at all recommended. Next up, I want to talk about discovery intelligence. Basically, what discovery intelligence is a system that can make decisions for you, but also take input based on what you know about your systems. So it's one thing to identify things automatically. It's another thing to identify things automatically and apply all the proper monitoring information along with it, customized to your specific environment. So if you take the manual example I just gave, reaching out directly to each of these systems on your own, going through the protocols, you don't have to do that. There are systems out there that are intelligent that you can do this for you. Now, when I say intelligent, I mean directly out of the box. It knows what to do, but also being extensible. So it's not enough to have predefined rules within your solution. Those rules need to be customized. So really what this comes down to is that every network is different. There is no one size fits all for infrastructure monitoring. But important things like being able to schedule those discoveries or run them on demand, get additional information, not just about monitoring, but asset information, service tags, all that type of stuff, as well as it being automated. Gone are the days of reaching out to those systems individually. A tool is doing that job for you. So with that being said, let's shift to the landscape and evolution of IT infrastructure monitoring. Now, looking at this in the context of the evolution of monitoring, so we already spoke about the non-automated detection. The first thing in the evolution would be no monitoring. We have very simple networks, very easy to see if they were up or down or what was wrong. But as networks got more complex, we came up with a non-automated detection using the manual way, based mostly on hindsight. Something happened and you were able to determine it afterwards. But then as we move into more complex systems of today, we get something that we're calling out-of-the-box monitoring. And that's where the automation kicks in and provides context. It gives you deepened insight into dependencies. It also helps you to get to that root cause analysis and narrow down what you have to look at to solve issues. The next step would be to be able to customize that. You've got multi-service app support. You have environments like I spoke about earlier. There's so many changes and new things going on. Being able to adapt to that environment is critical, and to be able to automate the resolutions that you need so that the environment is being fixed proactively. Having said that, that's the area of discovery intelligence. If we think about an axis then, we are going from low context to high and from manual to automated. But we are also going from not doing anything through a reactive type of approach into a more proactive, and that's where everyone really wants to be. So next up, I want to talk about the discovery intelligence process itself. Really, it comes down to something initiates that scan to say, go look at my network, whether that be manual or scheduled. Once the scan is running, it collects data from all those different systems and then returns those results. But not just that, it also makes decisions based on what information is returned in those results. And I would say that this is an iterative process. This is not one and done. This is something that should be ongoing. I recommend scanning at least every 24 hours. You need to know if there are changes in your environment, and this is a big piece of that. The discovery intelligence and leveraging that to save yourself time. So let's move on to out-of-the-box monitoring. What do I mean by out-of-the-box monitoring? Well, here we define this as monitoring capabilities that are built into the solution that you don't have to manually adjust. It's all there available upon installation that's pre-programmed that you can use. Basically, industry standard is coming down to availability and performance. You can see when we're talking about availability, that can be anything from a simple ICMP request or checking the status of a port on a switch, or even hardware status, a power failure, fan failures, and all of those things. Performance-wise, it really comes down to CPU, disk, memory, and interface utilization. Those are industry standards. Those should be expected in any solution you adopt, and they should be included out of the box. What the out-of-the-box monitoring discovers through its automation can be so much based on your network. There are limits if something has an IP address. Next up, I want to talk about the best practices of what do you monitor, what are the things on the network that are out-of-the-box monitoring covers as well. So what do you monitor? Well, when it comes to network systems, routers, switches, firewalls, etc., basically anything providing network connectivity, you're going to want to look at the ICMP request, but also individual port status, interface utilization, so how much traffic is passing over those ports. But other things can cause outages too, right? Let's say a power supply fails. You want to replace that as soon as possible. Onto operating systems. Really, it's quite similar. We're reaching out to the device and making sure it's available, and then CPU, disk, and utilization monitoring. When it comes to cloud systems, really you're looking at, is it available from my location? That's the most important piece, is to make sure you're able to access the system from your remote location. And then moving on to servers or physical systems, baseboard management controllers. I'll talk about this a little bit since some might not be familiar. Really, this is a small system included with your server that is standalone. It lets you look at all of the different aspects of the system. So each individual hardware component within that system, we should be monitoring the status of. And so for out-of-the-box monitoring, these are the things that it should be able to discover and monitor all the different aspects of these different systems for you. So it's all pre-programmed and set up for you. I want to close out this section with lessons learned. Best practices aren't always about what to do. They can also be about what not to do. So I've put together 6 common issues to avoid. First up is false positives. What these are is when you receive an alert, you go and check on the system and, oh, lo and behold, it's available. This is important to note that this should tell you that you need to take an action. You need to go and customize your system to prevent these happening in the future. Nobody wants to be woken up in the middle of the night by a system that didn't necessarily need to receive an alert from. If this ever happens to you, make sure to take some sort of action to correct it so it doesn't happen in the future. Overly aggressive settings ties into the false positives that I just spoke about. Within every monitoring solution, there's some sort of cycle where it goes out and reaches out to these systems, and then there's a timeout and retry values are associated with them. That's not one size fits all. A huge amount of customers need to adjust these to a different setting to avoid these false positives. Every network is different. At the same time, I've seen a lot of people falling victim to keeping too much data. Do you really need 5 years worth of performance data on that system? Most likely not. So you have to think about that because there's a cost associated with that, and it can affect the performance of the system as well. When it comes to alert storms, let's picture a switch with 50 servers connected to it, and that switch completely goes offline. You don't want to get 51 alerts. You want to get that one alert from that switch where the root cause of the problem is. If you get too many alerts at the same time, it makes it very difficult to discover the root cause of the problem. From a non-critical monitoring perspective, not every system is the same in your environment. There's obviously very critical systems that need to be up 24/7, 365. When it comes to development and test systems, you don't want an alert at 3 or 4 a.m. to go and fix it. Those things can wait until the morning to be fixed typically. With that being said, it's really important to establish some level of criticality between your systems so that you can separate your alerts effectively. Another issue to avoid is tool sprawl. I read in a recent study that the average number of monitoring tools that an organization has is between 10 and 12, which is crazy. But if you think about it, okay, you got a cloud and that comes with its monitoring system, and maybe one department has a system that they prefer, maybe a legacy system, and somebody else has something that they built, and it all begins to really add up. Really, too many tools, understanding, assessing, doing a survey, and figuring out whether you can minimize the number of tools so you can consolidate down to a lesser or somehow integrate them into a particular tool that you can use as a single pane of glass or a single source of truth. And being able to avoid that issue probably leads to my last point, which is communications breakdown. So the more tools you have, the more teams that are doing different things and are not sharing the data. That's a direct result of this. Being able to alert stakeholders through automated means with some of these out-of-the-box tools is really critical. The final section I want to highlight is customized monitoring. So how does this differ from out-of-the-box monitoring? If you remember the evolution, it's the last piece on it, because in this case, it's not only out of the box, it's not only automation, but it allows you to take the new information you get through monitoring and make easy adjustments with that. Really, it's just extensibility of the system in general, not just monitoring. So monitors, sensors, elements, whatever the vendor may be calling them. That is an important piece. Being able to adapt to change. If something changes in the environment, you have to monitor something new. If an outage occurred and your system didn't tell you about it, you need to go and configure your system so it knows about this in the future. But it's also notifications and corrective actions and that discovery intelligence. We're not just talking about monitoring. We're also talking about how people are notified. Can we automatically correct the issue as well as that discovery intelligence I keep talking about? It's not enough for it to be static. It needs to be extensible. You need to be able to adjust the rules based on your requirements in your environment. I'm going to go over some examples of what you can customize. So first up is SSL certificates. We see this all the time. Even in the last few years, Google, Facebook, and all the big players had some sort of outage related to certificates expiring. We have ways to monitor those and notify you when they're expiring, so don't get caught off guard. But there's also things like services and processes, Windows services, Linux, Unix processes, and you can see I put on the first one completely custom as well. So within our solution, you're not limited to just these base types of service, process SSL certificates. You also have the option, if you're not covered by one of those built-in types, to completely customize it. So anything you do, you can do with a script, you can monitor and automate. On the discovery intelligence piece, we're really talking about customizing those scan rules. So being able to say, okay, this is a switch based on information returned. But what about new systems, new vendors? The system should be extensible, so you can specify those new scan rules as well as adjust which monitors or attributes get associated with those systems. And the same goes for actions. I spoke about it a little bit, but it's mostly about that automated resolutions piece. So you get an alert that your service is down and just needs a restart. You should be automating that. Don't waste your time on this any longer. Anytime you're receiving an alert, and make sure you're looking at what are the corrective steps I took and whether or not you can automate it. The data display is just down to, well, everyone has their different preferences when it comes to how to display data. So you should be able to customize this as well. And then finally, on the automations piece, we're talking about integrations within inbound REST API. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on that in the next slide. Yeah, so what is an inbound REST API? It's a way to get or set data that enables integration to existing business processes. So really, it's displaying monitoring data. We get this request all the time. I want to show my monitoring data elsewhere. Well, that's where the inbound REST API makes possible. But also other things like maybe you want to start automatically monitoring things as soon as they're created, or maybe you want to grab some data from another system like Active Directory, CMVB, and update the monitoring system. Those are all possible with an inbound REST API. Well, this takes me to the last section of this webinar here, just to summarize. The first thing, I've already mentioned Progress WhatsUp Gold. I've shown you various dialogues throughout, spoke about all the features and the approach to discovery intelligence. And these are all available within WhatsUp Gold. It's got a powerful combination of out-of-the-box functionality, intuitive workflows, and system integrations like I just spoke about. And so it lets you discover and maintain control of your IT infrastructure and find and fix problems fast. So whether that's on-prem, in the cloud, or in a hybrid setup. And there's easy customization, which is the primary focus for the product. So in terms of end-to-end visibility, it offers a unique interactive mapping interface. So you can see in the bottom image there, it's all point and click. It allows you to drill down. It's color-coded to allow you to quickly, at a glance, see everything connected to your network. And whether that's servers, applications, or clouds. And it can even monitor and optimize network traffic and perform log management. Finally, it's worth noting that WhatsUp Gold, or any monitoring solution that has out-of-the-box and customized monitoring, is going to help you prove the value of what you're doing. And that's important with any of our jobs. We all obviously want to boost IT efficiency, as the title of this webinar suggests. And you want people to be able to see network operations as capable of, and you want to be able to share it. So you can learn more about WhatsUp Gold by visiting our website or downloading the free trial at whatsupgold.com/trial. And we also have an overview video or interactive demo if you want to go to /demo as well, or you can check out our YouTube channel. And then in summary, we have 5 takeaways from what I spoke about. So the first one is monitor more of your complex network through automation and customization. So again, we want to automate and customize as much as your network as you possibly can to do more with less. Number 2, no existing solution will cover every possible outage scenario, but the right tool can have a dramatic impact. So While we aim for perfect, we all know full well we're not going to have 100% uptime. There will be issues. It's how you react to those issues and having the right tools in place that help you to overcome these issues. Third is your business will benefit most by customizing for your specific use cases. So I've said this throughout the webinar, no two environments are the same. So you want to customize as much as possible for your own scenario. 4 is use feedback to fine tune your processes to avoid common mistakes. Again, this is any issues you see throughout that you've experienced in the past. You can make sure that you're iterating on those and trying to avoid them happening again in future. And then finally, a solution like WhatsUp Gold will employ discovery intelligence to provide end-to-end visibility for your hybrid network. So again, just making sure you have the right tools like WhatsUp Gold in place, that'll make your life a lot easier. And with that, that's the end of my portion of the webinar. Thanks everybody for listening. I'll now hand it across to my colleague Jason, who will answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Wow. Incredible presentation, Greg. And as he said, we are going to be bringing on his colleague, Jason, right now. So let's see about getting Jason on stage. So, Jason, hey, there you are. How are you? Can you hear me okay?
I do.
Outstanding. So what I am going to do right now is put up the reminder that the poll question is up now. So while we're doing some of your Q&A, we appreciate your answers on what additional information you would like from Progress to hear about their solutions. I also want to mention that they have a doc available right now in the doc section, and that looks like a great one. It's a PDF on the ABCs of IT infrastructure monitoring. So be sure to check that out for more. All right. Jason, since you are ready, let's get into it. Got some great questions for you today. First one is, does WhatsUp Gold have the ability to show the different interfaces that connect the devices?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So as part of the discovery intelligence that Greg was talking about, WhatsUp Gold will actually map out every single interface associated with a specific device. So let's say you have a switch with hundreds of interfaces. WhatsUp Gold considers that a single device, shows you the status of all those interfaces individually, as well as can collect the performance of that and generate topology maps automatically as well.
All right, fantastic. Okay, next question for you. What types of devices are not supported by WhatsUp Gold?
That's a interesting question, but really to be monitored and discovered by WhatsUp Gold, it has to have some sort of IP address. As long as it has an IP address, that's the base requirement, and we'll monitor it in various different levels depending on additional access, such as SNMP, SSH, and other protocols.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Next up, does WhatsUp Gold come with support when you purchase it?
Absolutely. So we have a technical support team. They're open 24 hours a day. They're very happy to take any sort of cases, help along the way with initial setup, answer any questions about the product, as well as help troubleshoot issues. Not only that, you also get access to our courseware. So we have a bunch of courses to learn how to use the product, as well as become a master in the product, as well as certified within the product.
Got you. Great stuff. Okay, got time for, I think, for a couple more quick ones. Nick wants to know, how do you evaluate discovery intelligence for recommendation accuracy?
Very good question. So WhatsUp Gold does give you the ability to automatically begin monitoring these discovered devices, but that's actually turned off by default. So you get a list of devices, and we do our best to identify how we see fit based on the credentials and access and things along those lines. You're able to review that information and confirm its accuracy. So for example, let's say we identify a device as a switch. Well, more than likely we have SNMP access and it met some criteria, but perhaps in your environment, you don't want to consider a switch. That's where the extensibility of that discovery intelligence is so important, because you can say, well, no, don't identify this device that way, identify it a different way. So you have a lot of control as it relates to what the recommendations are versus what actually gets monitored in the end.
Okay, I like that granularity. Very important for admins. Okay, Jeffrey wants to know: can the product assess the use of the computer by a user to determine users that really don't need a computer?
It's,
Uh,
it's an interesting use
I
case.
like.
I would say yes, though. Part of What's Up Gold, you're able to look at the utilization of the system, and that includes, CPU, disk, memory, interface utilization. And if you see over time none of that stuff's moving, it's highly likely that person's not using their system too much.
Got you. Okay, finally, before I let you go today, Jason, thanks so much for an awesome Q&A. Somebody wants to take the next step with Progress. They're all psyched up because of what they've seen today. What's the next thing they should do?
Whatsupgold.com. You can get an evaluation for 30 days that gives you full access to every piece of the product, and we have experts on standby waiting to help you get set up and be successful.
Okay, fantastic. Always love hearing what Progress is doing, what they're up to, such a cutting edge company. Jason, thank you so much for your time and your responses in the Q&A today. Can't wait to see you again.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.